and welcome to FP2 for Formula here in Jakarta, Indonesia, which I actually didn't realise that Indonesia, like the Indonesian one was in Jakarta this year, and I accidentally went onto the emergency screen because it's almost 2 in the morning. Actually, do you know what? Now it is 2 in the morning, and I'm tired and I've only been up for about 10 minutes? So everything also seems extra loud to me. The session has just got underway. Everything seems loud because Joshua's had to take the thing that makes everything a bit quieter. And I'm going to have to keep an eye on this very closely. I shall be handing over to TNT for a majority of this, obviously pitching in here and there. The track circuit is currently wet, so it should make for a very interesting FP2. I'm wondering how all the cars will do, given there are quite a lot of wet patches. Some of them are on the racing line as well, especially around the corners of the circuit. So I shall pass you over to TNT.
Well, we're going to find out in a minute or two. We've got 40 minutes in this session. If it doesn't rain, it'll dry up, so the last laps will be the quickest laps. As we said already, they're still on exactly the same tyre as before. A 106.050 was the quickest yesterday by Matti Günther. So keep that in mind, because that's an interesting one as well. More for information than anything else is what lap time delta there is between dry and wet. You heard there, bit of wheel spin.
Yeah, not ideal conditions at all for traction. Obviously, with the wet conditions as well.
I'm just going to quickly pitch in that weather currently in the sky currently does kind of give me the impression that there's more rain to come, so best keep an eye out for that throughout this session.
Through Jaguar, and you can see the car, Mitch Evans, sawing on the steering wheel a little bit as he's trying to put the power on as the car is still turning. Switched it there with a little bit of a Scandinavian rally flick. But I would suggest that the power delivery is a little bit more aggressive than the grip can take at the moment.
It's interesting, isn't it, going into turn 7? That's where Gordon Fries ended up at the barrier yesterday after suspension failure. There's still a few patches of water, but already you can see the track is beginning to dry out, such as the weather that we've got around here.
Yeah, you're getting that line a little bit like when you're skiing and you suddenly see that there is snow skiing. I'm talking about not water skiing here. Where, you know, you see the wheel tracks of the car ahead, and slowly but surely that will become more apparent.
Yeah, well, a few drivers will be hoping to not go off-piste here at this circuit. Then, so Evans making his way round. It's his teammate Nick Cassidy that you want to be keeping an eye on in the wet conditions. If you remember in Shanghai, an amazing victory that he took, lights the flag, led every single lap of that race. And you could see the emotion for Nick Cassidy after what has been a challenging season 11 so far.
Since he's basically his first season in Formula E, he's been competitive, and then suddenly this year it's all slipped away, not just for him but for the Jaguar team. They've not quite had that momentous run of success that they've had in the previous couple of seasons, and so obviously it was an important one as well for the team to get a bit of confidence and a bit of positive feeling, and realise that actually if they continue to deliver a good job on circuit, that the results do come. It's just sometimes you feel like you're pushing water uphill at times.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We've been talking about the Drivers' Championship a lot going into this weekend, Alan. Obviously, we know that Roland has got a sizable advantage over his competitors at the sharp end of the field, but it's the Teams' Championship where things are a lot closer. Porsche managed to leapfrog Nissan last time out, courtesy of what was a bit of an off-colour weekend for that team. They didn't, I wouldn't say they didn't show up at the races, but you know, no points for either driver in the second race in Shanghai. Yeah, but with 16 races, it's very difficult to try to ensure, especially in a championship that is, I would say,
so tricky to predict as what we have at the moment, to be able to have 16 races where you are consistent every time. You know, something will go wrong at one of those, and it's to make sure on your bad day, it's better than the opposition's bad day. And that's how ultimately, you know, you ultimately win a championship. But it is super close, as you said, with 1 point there. Then there's a bit of a gap back to DS Penske, and then McLaren again. But round about McLaren, and one of the surprises for me of the season is Mahindra. Mahindra has been super strong. They've had a very good run, considering that it's been a couple of years in the doldrums. And then with the Andretti program as well, who with Jake Hughes won this Drivers' Championship just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Just speaking of Mahindra, I remember my first weekend in Formula E in Road 69, and the team there had an absolute dog's weekend of it. Cars stopping on circuits and no pace at all when they were circulating around. If you compare that to where they've been over the course of this season, they've had podiums courtesy of Nick de Vries and some strong results with Ed Mortara on the other side of the garage. Fifth in the standings, and very much, as you said, on the coattails of McLaren in the Teams Championship as well.
And that's important for the team. You know, it's commercially very important for teams to finish as high up as possible. But also, I think, from a morale point of view, from attracting drivers and engineers and personnel and things, then it's always important, you know, people gravitate towards success. And that's something that has definitely started to have a positive momentum at Mahindra.
Just looking here at Sean McGill, Jake Dennis's race engineer. Jake Dennis having a relatively okay run of things. Yes, they 13th at the end of FP1, but there was a yellow flag at the end of that session when Oliver Rose ended up in the barrier. So a few drivers lost an opportunity to improve in their final flying laps as Dennis comes across the timing line. I suppose one positive to the wet weather that we've got here in FP2 is that there won't be any dust problems out on track, at least.
No. Certainly there's no dust getting thrown up at the moment. It's been damped down, as we see a decent bit of oversteer there from Taylor Barnard, who's popped himself up into 4th place.
He loves making this car dance, doesn't he? He really seems to just absolutely harry it at every opportunity.
Yeah, but you have to, understeer is slow in the wet. It's just super slow. So you do need to make sure that it's balanced. I wouldn't say, you know, 1970s power oversteer rally style is the way to go, but you do need to have it on the nose and where you're not just sitting with a lot of steering angle on, waiting on the front to turn.
I think the two McLarens out in formation at the moment, as Barnard was also getting sideways down into turn 13, just knocking the rear slightly going into there. I'll be interested to see how Barnard is going to fare. He's been the topic of a bit of conversation going into this weekend as well. Of course, we're now at the point where driver market news is getting ever more prominent in the paddock here in Formula E. And Barnard, of course, contracted with the Neon McLaren team as he goes to the top of the pile. But Ian James, team principal, as we look at him here at the moment, talking about Barnard's future because the Neon McLaren name is going to be disappearing from Formula E at the end of this season. And the question is, will they be able to retain Barnard? But Ian James sounding confident that he'll be able to keep the services of Taylor despite whatever guise they end up in for season 12.
Yeah, Taylor Barnard came in Berlin last year, bit of a one-off race, did very well, and he's kept that positive momentum. He's obviously got the speed. I think we saw that in the junior categories as Freins goes deep into the corner. Now there, that wasn't, I think that was an intentional one. It was a very close-in shot, but I think he was just pushing heavily into the corner, trying to gain lap time on the way in, running way past the normal dry rock line to go to the outside, where in theory there should be a little bit more grip. Robin Freins has always historically been good in these conditions. Probably when it gets to that half-and-half stage between wet and dry is his optimum area. But he kind of drives with the seat of his pants by just pure feel.
Something looks like it's a dry here for Nick Cassidy. Suspension troubles we're hearing.
Also underneath it, looking at the floor.
Well, I mean, look at the two front wheels there. They're at different angles, aren't they? Unless it's just camber.
That's excessive toe out, I would say. Now, yesterday, Robin Freins, who we're looking at now, had a suspension failure where a bolt failed in the front right suspension, which pitched him straight into the wall. There's a bump entry into turn 7, and as he was braking into 7, he hit the bump, and then the car kind of, well, one of the wheels just turned right and the other one was turning left, and the car followed the wall as opposed to followed where he wanted it to go.
Yeah, it was not ideal at all there for Robin Price. Thankfully, he was okay as we look at a super slow-mo of Taylor Barnard sliding his way round. Teammate Sam Bird there keeping a watching brief in the background. So look here at Mitch Evans just very close to the wall through turn 6 as well. This is through the first sector, nice and tight on the left-hander, onto the power. Big snap of oversteer as he heads down the rest of the track.
Doesn't look like there's a heck of a lot of grip out there.
No. Team radio?
Okay, Nick, could you just give us as much information as you can about what happened? It looks very similar to what happened to Robin yesterday.
So possible similar issue then for Nick Cassidy here.
So on the bottom of the suspension where it joins to the upright, so the upright is that where the brake disc is mounted to. There is a bolt there that joins the bottom leg of the suspension to that upright, and apparently that's what sheared yesterday. Now, there was a question with Robin Frines yesterday whether it was actually something that had maybe been fatigue, live fatigue, skimmed the wall somewhere in Shanghai, maybe skimmed another car in Shanghai, probably more likely. But we haven't actually had the information on the feedback from it. But I'd be surprised if there was 2 cars with the same problem. If there is, that doesn't seem to me to be, I would say, just bad luck.
In terms of, just to be clear about this as well, obviously it's 2 Jaguar powered cars that are effectively only spec parts because of the front power.
Front suspension, yes, is a spec car. So as we now look, remember we said it was a 1:06.0 yesterday for the fastest lap time, so it's basically 9 seconds is the difference.
Let's have a look at Cassidy then. So into the box, front right suspension is what we need to tonight. Yeah. So he's obviously had a problem when he's been on his lap.
I was about to say, is that loud?
And here you can see there quite visibly.
Going
that
far
issues
into
with
the
Cassidy,
fast line.
and that's going to tail the
Fast
Jaguar
lane,
drivers
but
running.
I think
Not only in this session,
might have been
thankfully
wheeled
for
back.
Cassidy, if it
That,
went
I
anywhere on
feel,
the lap, then
needs
it was
another
a
look
relatively
at.
slow point at the circuit for him, so not too much of a problem. Thankfully, didn't end up in the same circumstance in his front, i.e. in the wall.
Yeah, the thing that they've got to look at now as well, anything around about there, if you've got a drive shaft and you've got the front motor generator unit in there as well, is to make sure that it's not designed to have a floppy wheel, and so therefore to make sure it hasn't done any of extra damage as well.
Well, Robin Frines, as we know, ended up in the barrier yesterday, but Envision, historically, very quick in the wet so far in season 11. Let's go down to Alexa, who's in the pit lane, catching up with Envision's team principal, Sylvain Felipe.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I'm down here with Sylvain, and first things first, I was wondering if you'd just give us an update on Robin's car, what you guys found, and how it's looking today.
Yeah, as predicted, the fault was what we thought it to be. So the bolt that joins the lower wishbone and the upright sheared off completely. Very unusual failure. It was a really low mileage part, so no reason really to suspect this. So anyway, the team did a good job, changed the whole corner.
I don't know how, but I feel the
we spent a
conditions
lot
out
of time
there are
getting the
getting
steering right because this
worse.
steering damper can be a bit
but it's
finicky.
not even raining.
So we got that right, and so far Robin is reporting no issue. Just did a good lap time, so seems fine. But I just saw that Nick had maybe a similar issue just now, so if that's the case, it's a bit concerning.
And is that something you're going to be able to take a further look at, to work with Jaguar and see what's going on?
Yeah, for sure. We'll compare what happened to both cars, and if it's the same, I mean, this is a part that is the same on all 22 cars. So, yeah, it's not just us. So, yeah, for sure, we'll compare and see if there's a pattern.
And just historically, as Tom said, you guys are very good round wet races. How are you feeling about today in the weather forecast?
Yeah, it's hard to predict. The radar is showing that some rain is coming and the clouds are not moving much, so it's a part of the world where you don't really know where the showers are coming. So let's see. Also, when it's hot, of course, it will dry quickly. So it's hard to predict really whether quali and race the state of the track by then. But yeah, we'll do our best.
Thank you so much, Sylvain. We'll let you get back to it.
Thank you to Sylvain. Thank you to Alexa. Yeah, be interested to see how they are going to fare this weekend in Vision.
I do love Sylvain Felipe. Finicky. Not many French people know that phraseology, but he understands motorsport phraseology perfectly.
Well, they'll have a bit of a rain dance in this part of the world, and I'm sure that they'll be hoping for that in Vision this weekend.
TNT Sports.
Right, so that's me up. And if I sound like I'm ill, I kind of am. and I kind of am not. It's weird. Though, hopefully I'll get better soon. I don't know what's going on with the thing below my camera. I don't know what's going on there. But we're just going to have to deal with it. So, the conditions out there and how they're affecting the track and all of the drivers. It seems to be maintaining as a wet track. I mean, I think the rain stopped about an hour ago, but it had settled down about an hour and a half ago. And that hasn't really dried up within the time since then to session starting now. And it's left the track looking, well, like the floor surrounding a swimming pool. That's what it reminds me of. So there are wet patches all over the track, which are in the racing line, outside the racing line. But the thing is, the drivers can't seem to keep on the racing line. I've noticed quite a lot of drifting going on from the racing line towards, like, further away. They still seem to be going wide slightly, and I would say that is concerning, but only because of the conditions that have passed, but more concerning due to the fact that it does not look like it will dry soon. I've checked the weather radar, and it does not show any more rain occurring throughout today. It does show in 24 hours' time there will be rain. So, who knows? The rain might affect the race tomorrow, or races. I believe there's 2. I don't often cover Formula E, but I believe there is 2 races. Though it does not look like it is gonna maintain the dry weather that is currently being blessed upon us for FP2. And I heard mention of, like, the rain gods there from TNT, and it kind of reminded me of that woman, and I think she was from Indonesia, who did a song to make the rain stop, and I really hope we have her around this weekend because she was amazing in the MotoGP a couple of years ago. Literally, the rain stopped right after. So I really hope she's around. So currently on top, and yes, I'm not currently using my timing screen because that is very far down that way and very small. Right, so currently top of the session is the line. And I can't actually see what the line is up by. So I am going to swap to the battle screen just so I can give a demonstration of what the timings of this are. And we're about to come back from ad break. So currently, their line is top of the session with a 1:15.097, and it is about 3/10 faster than Mortara, who is currently in second with a 1:15.387. Van Dorn is third, De Vries is fourth, Roland is fifth, Frines is sixth, Barnard is seventh, and it's Da Costa.
I'm not sure. It feels like my tire pressures or temps are through the roof.
Right, so tyre pressure not good out there, according to Da Costa, and it's a lot of smoke coming out from this one particular car. I'm guessing it's being cooled off, or the driver is being cooled off. So it is quite warm over there. I say quite warm. I think the height of today reaches like 31, 32 for them. 7th is Barnard, Dennis is 8th, Buemi is 9th, Da Costa is 10th, Evans is 11th, Nato is 12th, Tictum is 13th, Muller is 14th, Gunther is 15th, Bird is 16th, Beckman is 17th, Hughes is 18th, Maloney is in 19th, Werner is in 20th, Degrassi is in 21st, and Cassidy is in 22nd. Last year, Cassidy was so much faster in the sessions. So it has surprised me this year about how slow he has been. And let's see, the racing line has finally started to appear throughout the dry patches, so we can finally see bits of that. But those wet patches do not look like they have any sign of letting up or drying anytime soon, which means that they will most likely also affect the qualifying session in about an hour and a half. I believe it's about an hour and a half, maybe hour 40 that gets started. And most of the drivers are currently coming into the pit lane, currently looking at Taylor Barnard, who is in his pit box and just staring out, and I think he's staring out at the weather and contemplating what his strategy should be for this pre-practice 2 session, and by extension of the qualifying session. Only 6 drivers are currently out on the track for FP2, so I will pass over now back to TNT.
He's the person that sort of can pull out results out of these type of changing conditions pretty well historically in the past. Obviously for the Lola Yamaha Abt team, it's their first season, so it's a learning season, not for Abt and not for Degrassi, because they've been in it since day one, but actually for the Lola Yamaha side of this operation. And these are the sort of ones that, you know, you can grab a few points and certainly maybe even something more if things do run your way.
We always say that Ray's a great leveller as Degrassi gets it very sideways through the final corner.
Oh,
Gets it up
that's
quite nicely.
not good for
Not the quickest line
Degrassi.
around there, but good to
Obviously
watch.
seems to have hit a wet patch round.
Lose a bit of time
I believe it was final
sector,
corner they
as you would
looked
imagine as a result of that slide. But I imagine that experience is going to count for a lot here this weekend.
I think skill counts for a lot.
Fair point,
Actually,
yeah.
more than experience. I wouldn't say experience is going to be the thing. I think for certain drivers like Oliver Rowland, then it does, because he's got a tricky race up ahead of him. He's leading the championship by quite a long way. So for him, he can only make a mistake to reduce his chances of winning a championship. Unless he obviously goes out and wins, then he extends his points. But I think those conditions for him, it's a case of being patient, more patient than he probably normally would be if
A lot of
he was driving.
miss is starting
He was
and
on
yes,
the
I
top
am
step
aware
of the
that
podium was in Hyderabad in 2023, first year of the Gen 3 era of Formula E.
But
You see him getting very sideways there through turn 6.
It's getting a bit misty.
But yeah, he's been on the podium last couple of times for Bsky this year, including that emphatic 1-2 for the team in the first race in Shanghai. Put in an incredible final few laps, cycling his way up through the field, and right when it mattered, he was there to pounce on the drivers in front of him to get through and into second place to secure that 1-2 finish for the team. It was spectacular to watch from a commentary box point of view, and also the two drivers, as you can imagine, were absolutely elated with the result.
Double champion, John-Eric Verne, and he's the one thing about him, if you give him a sniff of a podium, my goodness, he'll put everything to get there. And, you know, it will be very robust in his attacking or defence to ensure it, there's no question. But he's another driver that's maybe not quite, well, he hasn't had the season that he expected. Kyle Wilson-Clark there, who is his engineer of mine, actually, in the past.
Works quite closely with him then?
Yes.
Yeah. Just look at the dirt here on Pascal Verlaine's crash helmet as he makes his way through the first sector. Where's Verlaine currently at the moment? He's top of the pile, isn't he? 1:15 by only a few tenths of a second, actually.
It's from quite a long time ago. They did that lap time. The lap times actually haven't moved. Most of the people being in the pits at this moment in time. just preparing with 16 minutes to go.
What's the weather forecast looking for qualifying as well, actually? Because there's not particularly long turnaround between practice and
No,
qualifying.
it's 1 hour. It does reduce a little bit, but got to be honest with you, it wasn't quite meant to rain so hard as it did.
Yeah, so, well, if it does rain going into quali, that could be particularly interesting. And also, if it rains during qualifying as well, for that matter. 15 minutes left to go of this second free practice session. Currently, the two Mahindras, 2nd and 5th, with Mortara and De Vries. Let's get down to Alexa once again, who's catching up with their team principal, Fred Bertrand.
Fred, seemingly so far so good in FP2, but I just had a look at your cars. They're absolutely covered in mud. How are the track conditions out there?
I think we have seen yesterday that there was a lot of dust, so you can imagine that dust plus water makes a nice mud on the car. So yeah, that's a new design. But no, in general, it's going well. I think looks that the cars are well prepared for this track. Yesterday we were okay, and today it looks also okay. So let's see. But conditions are very tricky.
And top 5 in the championship right now, 5 races to go. What are the team's hopes for the rest of the season?
A little bit of a wobble there from Verline at the exit of the final corner.
Same way, I think we are happy with the way the championship started. We were not so sure to get very quickly into the game and discovered that the car was good.
The wall
was definitely a satisfaction, but now we need to just keep on building and make sure that we deliver good. We were not so happy with Shanghai and Tokyo, so let's make sure that the next 3 events, this one included, gives us better points and better results.
Not so happy with Shanghai and Tokyo. Do you expect this one will be a little bit different for you guys?
The problem is that we become a little bit more demanding. Now we want a bit more than before, but we want to be sure that we deliver good racing, and we made a few mistakes in those 2 events, which gave us a bit of regrets. So we think that definitely we can do better, and in execution mostly. So that's where we are focused right now, make sure that execution is well. If it's the case, we should perform.
Thank you, Fred. We'll let you get back to it. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Alexa. Thank you to Fred Bertrand, team principal of Mahindra. I love how expectations can change so quickly in the world of motor racing. Looking here at the Andretti of Nico Müller, caked in mud and dust around this wet and slippery Jakarta circuit. Currently 16th quickest is Nico Müller at the moment. He'll be hoping for some improvements.
TNT Sport.
So, I had a feeling that advert was going to come on, and because mud on the cars. They say that dust is probably one of the worst. Because it is. And there's something in the background of my mic, but I think it's just feedback. Though, dust can be one of the worst things because it kicks up a lot. But now that has been rained on, and now it's turning into mud or muck and getting onto the cars and actually sticking. For some reason, I think that's worse than the dust. Because it's no longer a part of air, basically. It's no longer able to float. It's just getting stuck to the cars. And I don't know, does it add weight? I don't believe it does add a lot, but that surely can't be doing any good for the cars. Right, so currently top of the session is Hughes with Verline in 2nd and Mortara in 3rd, and the conditions seem to be getting... It's looking a lot less like it's going to rain again. Today, at least. Or within the next hour. Within the next session. It doesn't look like it's going to rain anymore, and the clouds are beginning to dissipate. But that racing line still has elements of damp patches running through it, especially around that last corner. It seems to be causing a little bit of a havoc with quite a few of the drivers. I believe it was either Verline and Acosta. I can't exactly remember which one, though only about 5 minutes ago at most, they lost the rear at the exit of the final corner and thankfully regained control of the car just before the rear would have smashed into the side of the barrier. The barrier. So, concerns there. And it doesn't seem to be affecting a lot of the other bits of the track. That doesn't seem to be as bad as the final corner. There are quite a lot of wobbles going on from all of the cars. And for those that are unfamiliar with what I mean by wobble, I mean like when imagine this hand is the car and this is moving across at how the car should be. This is what it is. The front can either wobble or the back can either wobble, and it's all to do with the wheels and how they're coping with the track. It's complicated. It's easier to attribute that to MotoGP, I find. But it also goes quite well to the cars of motorsport as well. And people are starting to come out of the pit lane now. The only people left in there are Hughes, Verline, Thurn, Dennis, Muller, Beckman, Maloney, Degrassi and Cassidy. Cassidy's been in there a very long time. And we are back from ad break. And there are 9 minutes currently left to go. Oh, and just as I say that, Bird hits one of the wet patches and it loses control slightly of the car, but regains it quite quickly before going into the next corner. See, that's what I'm talking about. The racing line has been littered with wet patches going all along, and they just keep hitting them. Hopefully this dries up before qualifying begins, because I cannot imagine what that's going to be like when they're all racing for their position for the races. Can you imagine what it's going to be like during the duels? It's going to be carnage if they don't get that dried. I shall throw it back to TNT now.
So it's constantly, but so far they're happy with the balance and the pace seems to be there, so hopefully we carry on like that.
And put your weatherman hat on for me. Are we expecting more rain this afternoon? You say dry quali, but...
And we said dry FP2, so...
That's a very fair point,
yeah, at the minute the radar
in
looks
fairness,
like,
it is dry.
And maybe a bit of rain around the race
the
time.
track's just wet.
So far we're planning on a dry quali.
Thank you so much, Cyril. Cheers.
Bit of a roulette wheel in terms of the conditions going into qualifying. No one particularly knows what's going to happen. If you look at the local weather apps around the area, they're all saying
I've always wanted to say this.
Today, but as you can
it's
see
true.
at the moment, it's not
From a
raining
certain
for a
point of
little
view.
while.
Yeah, that's the problem when you're next to the coast and in a country like we are there. It's actually just got that sort of weather trends, and little pockets will pop up very, very quickly and dump a lot of rain and then leave again.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we went, 4 seasons without wet weather in Formula E, and then the last few weekends we just can't seem to avoid it at all. We looked here at the replay of Nick Cassidy and the work that's been ongoing with that team following suspension.
I'm just going to take over here. This is the earlier incident with the 37, which I believe is Thurn. No, that's... 25. 37 is Cassidy. Oh, that's why Cassidy hasn't been out there. Cassidy has had a wheel problem, I believe. I think they're stuck in the opposite direction of each other. And that is who we saw coming out of the pit lane and going into the fast lane and then stopping. That is who that was. So that's also why Cassidy spent so much time in the pit lane, out of the pit lane now, however, throwing back to TNT.
To do is follow the evolution of the circuit so they know exactly where it is at the moment, and also how quickly it's drying, where they need to be, where they don't need to be in these conditions. Robin Frines coming through Sebastian Buemi coming through the final corner there. And actually, he got a reprimand for going excessively slowly in FP1 through that final section, something that I think we need to keep a little bit of an eye on in the early stages of qualifying. People, especially if it's tricky conditions, trying to back up and get a clean run to do their own lap.
Yeah, we saw this in FP1 yesterday. It's a constant talking point, especially in the group stages, as you say, Alan. 11 cars out on track in Group A and Group B at any one time, and they're all trying to fight for track position. The problem you get, especially in mixed conditions like this, is you get a late yellow flag or red flag, and then it completely disrupts the run plan, and then drivers who've only got 1 or 2 flying laps at the end of the session, they're all fighting for track position.
Yeah, they are, but, you know, if somebody's on a lap, you can't be sitting dawdling around in the middle of the road.
Absolutely.
And that's a simple fact of life, because, well, you can, but it potentially get a penalty, but also it will come back to bite you at some other time. Another driver, previous winner round here, Maximilian Günther, he's also under investigation for tyre pressure infraction, so we'll have to keep a little bit of an eye on that one as well. That's 3 drivers so far.
Yeah, I think the normal protocol for that is a fine. You know, if it's a first one, isn't it?
This is not an official session legally, so it's a free practice, and so therefore, you know, it doesn't actually have an effect. They're qualifying in the races are where the bigger penalties will be handed out.
I suppose that is likely to be tyre pressures too low, too high.
Too low.
Yeah. And the reason for that is that they're trying to lower the tyre pressures to get more grip on the...
Yeah, I think it's trying to basically, there's minimum tyre pressures that are set by the tyre suppliers, and that's on a safety ground. You want to try to get to the minimum because that's the most grip possible as a general rule, and ultimately sometimes you just sneak a little bit below it. But they all have sensors on them as well, so, you know, like in your road car, if you go over a big pothole or a speed bump too fast in your occasion, then you can actually damage the sensor. So, you know, this is why it's not necessarily slam dunk. You will have a penalty or something will be wrong. So it's got to be checked.
Yeah, damage the sensors and normally damages in my spine as well, going over those speed bumps a little bit too fast on that occasion. Anyway, 3 minutes left to go of this session. You can see a plethora of drivers now in full attack mode at the end of free practice 2 as they try to get an idea of what it's going to be like if the conditions are similar in the dual stages of qualifying. Just to remind you, if you're new to Formula E, we have 2 group stages of 11 cars out on track. The top 4 from each group goes through into the duels. We have quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then the finals. And the differences between the groups and the, as we see...
This is exactly what we're talking about. Sorry to interrupt you there. A driver trying to just move around and get off the line, but you're never 100% off the line.
It's so blind, isn't it? Especially that final sector. You come through turn 16 and you've got to move out of the way so quickly if you're not on a flying lap, but there's only a limited amount of space to do so.
Yeah, that's the issue. And once you're committed as well, coming through there when you're on a flying lap, then you can't just suddenly avoid something that's in the way.
The problem you've got as well is the tap goes on the outside of turn 16. The natural racing line is actually quite shallow in that corner. You can see on board here with Dennis, you're not using anywhere near all of the road because you're going straight into a right-hander, and you've got to keep it on the left-hand side of the track. So even if you're backing off, you're on the wrong side of the track as well, really.
Yeah, I don't think there's many lap times coming in the last couple of minutes. It looks like the majority of people are just, they're keeping with the same tyre. And with the same tyre, it's probably over temperature now because they've been running on a drying circuit. And so just running through to the checkered flag, as opposed to necessarily going for the ultimate lap time. They're keeping their powder dry for the qualifying, basically.
Yeah, we've got 3 sets of tyres over the course of the weekend, haven't we, in Formula E, so you've got to make sure you're using the right time. This is exactly what we're talking about on board here with Pascal Wehrlein, and a plethora of cars all wanting to share the same piece of real estate in those final couple of corners. Wehrlein comes across the line, stays second quickest, no improvement for them there at all. Likewise, the same for Oliver Rowland. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of drivers, as you say, in attack mode laps, but the lap time is not representative at all, anywhere near, in fact, improving.
No, and it's when you're driving in a condition like this on a tyre that's out of its comfort zone, then as you see, that's Dan Tickton running really, really wide there in the second last corner, where he it's not the second last corner, it was earlier in the lap, apologies, but just threw the car in and then it slid wide, and that was him, lost a second straight away just doing that.
Ticked him in the middle part of the lap here at the moment, just making his way around. You can see visibly the darker part of the circuit. That is the racing line where it's dried out, but he gets it very sideways going through turn 13.
To be honest, is Dan actually trying for the lap time, or is he just doing a Tokyo Drift style? This is his social media section that he's preparing for.
Well, they know a thing or two about marketing, don't they, the Cooper Kira team? Look at this is getting pretty scrappy. Even though it is free practice, there is a possibility that you could see some drivers getting either a slap on the wrist, maybe even a penalty if they're deemed to impede others whilst they're on flying laps.
Yeah, but coming through there was 7 cars all together just through the last couple of corners. And Zane Maloney also trying to feed his way out of going through the attack zone area.
Track conditions do not look particularly brilliant out there at all in terms of the lack of grip. Checkered flag is now out at the end of FP2 and drivers ready to now come across the timing line. I don't think we're going to see any improvements at all really at the end of this session. Everybody's taking it pretty easy despite being in their full power attack mode laps, just getting a feel for what the conditions are like as we head into qualifying. Only an hour or so's time between the 2 sessions, so relatively short turnaround, and thankfully relatively uneventful. No red flag periods, no drivers ending up in the barrier at the moment, even though a couple are still on their final flying laps in this session. So looking here at Norman Nato making his way around the final corner, currently 14th quickest for the Frenchman. Teammate Oliver Rowland 7 places better than that as it stands,
but only 0.2 of a second. So actually it's super tight there. If you look at it, you've got Jake Hughes a mile up the road, 1.5 seconds. Pascal Wehrlein, he did his time obviously at the optimum for the track grip, the rain that was on it, the tyre feeling and feedback, and then after that it's all pretty close with 1 second between second place Pascal Wehrlein and then Zane Maloney down in 20th. Yellow at turn 7, which is just them telling everybody that they're coming round for the standing start. So it's a practice start as well. Again, asking the question, how relevant is that? But then again, you never know.
No, absolutely not. It's interesting how much faster Jake Hughes is compared to everybody else. 1.4 seconds in his pocket over Pascal Wehrlein. The field behind that, as Alan said, very, very close together. There's another 9 drivers separated by 0.6 of a second, and further back than that, only another second separating the next 10. So, yeah, very interesting how close it is in Formula E.
Right, as they are all getting underway with their practice starts, I shall read through the list of where everyone has come. The only 2 people who finished in the pit lane were Barnard and Mortara. It says De Vries here as well, but I don't believe De Vries is currently out on the... I do believe De Vries is currently out on the track. But Hughes finished top of the session with a 1:13.673. Wehrlein in second with a 1:15.097. Now, is that... I wonder whether that's the actual time, because if so, that means that Hughes has managed to get almost 2 seconds, technically 1.5 seconds up on the rest of the field at least. And that is good for Hughes. Best watch out for him in qualifying and the races. So Wehrlein in second with 1:15.097, Barnard's in third with a 1:15.184. Mortara's in fourth, Van Dorn is in 5th, De Vries 6th, 7th is Roland, Frines is in 8th, Vern is in 9th, Dennis is 10th, Buemi is 11th, Da Costa is 12th, 13th is Evans, Nato is in 14th, Ticktum is in 15th, Muller is in 16th, 17th is Gunther, Bird is 17th, Beckman is in 19th, Maloney is in 20th, Degrassi is in 21st, and Cassidy is still in 22nd. Now, I just put it back to this screen. It shall be a quick off. Now, that... Oh, is that someone who stalled out on the track? No, they've managed to get going now. Right, so thank you for watching, as I suddenly want to sneeze. Thank you for watching. Please come back in about an hour's time for the qualifying session that will be on, which will take part 2 different groups and then the duels going into the finals. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.